Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last session of the European Conference on Xylella fastidiosa. The session is entitled, What Priorities for Research on Xylella fastidiosa? Science Support to Stakeholder Needs. This question is a logic one because research produces knowledge and contributes to the development of methods and tools, but research also opens new questions. And this is why it is important that finding is available over time and size to the challenges and the questions that for plant health and quarantine organisms are many. No need to remember that in Europe, more than 300 pests are regulated, and that for pests as complex as Xylella fastidiosa, targeted research that provides tailored solutions is needed. But the question also makes sense if we consider that science contributes to the development of methods and tools that are used by the stakeholders and supports the development of regulations that stakeholders have to comply with. Opportunities like the one offered by these sessions are invaluable and contribute to the unifying role of science across boundaries and across the mandates of those that identified research priorities, fund research priorities, implement research, and use research outputs. So it is still possible to ask questions to the speakers. You can just post them in the Cisco WebEx Q&A chat. And now I would like to welcome the first speaker, Giuseppe Stancanelli from EFSA, with his presentation, Xylella fastidiosa, Knowledge Gaps and Research Priorities, Contributions from the European Xylella fastidiosa conferences. Giuseppe, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Baldissera. So I will give a short presentation, provide an introduction to this section, also looking what we've done in the previous conference. I will try now to share PowerPoint. It's floating between different screens. Let's see. Is it clear? Yeah, I hope so.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we should always remember how everything started. We're in October 2013, and the colleagues in Apulia, they found out Xylella fastidiosa in olive trees in Lecce province, causing devastating deadly symptoms. EFSA activity start immediately in risk assessment, and we issued in November 2013 a first statement on host plants, entry and spread pathway, and risk reduction option. This was followed by a series of advice and risk assessment. In particular, in 2015, we completed a comprehensive pest risk assessment, which was then updated in 2019, including the results from the Ponte and XF Factors project. We also work on database of host plants, on support to member states on surveyor recently, as you have seen in poster and presentation today, pest survey card and guidelines. Overall, we produced 30 different outputs on risk assessment, advice and assistance on Xylella fastidiosa to the European Union and the member states. However, the activity doesn't stop to risk assessment because risk assessment needs data. Risk assessment is normally very avid for data. And in January 2015, the EFSA Plantal Panel recommended the conclusion of its risk assessment for Xylella fastidiosa for the European territory, that the continuation and intensification of research activity on host range, epidemiology and control of the Apulian outbreak of Xylella fastidiosa. This because there were not enough information to reach a strong conclusion. There was a lot of activity, lot of data were missing, lot of knowledge was missing. Following this, in May 2015, there was a European Parliament resolution which demanded several actions to add the spread of Xylella fastidiosa outbreak, and referring to the EFSA plantel panel conclusion, also asked to step up the funding for research and to increase the international networking. There was a series of workshops organized by European Commission, the GRTD. The first one was in Milano in July 2015 to discuss at the Expo about the option for the control of Xylella fastidiosa. The focus is always on the control of this very important pest. And so the research funding started. There was first the funding of the Ponte project in November 2015, and then was a dedicated topic on the Sustainable Food Security 2016 call under the Horizon 2020, which was then awarded to the XF Actors project. In this area, the role of EFSA came from the request from the GRTD that in September 2015 tasked EFSA to identify knowledge gaps and key priority for research on Xylella fastidiosa for the EU territory. Following this, we organized a first workshop on knowledge gaps on Xylella in November 2015 in Brussels. Here, this was a small workshop respect to this conference. We had only 130 participants from 20 different countries, 16 EU and 4 non-EU countries, and the participant, researcher, and stakeholders discussed the knowledge gaps, the research priorities in the different areas of research on Xylella fastidiosa. This was a first meeting which really established ideas for work to be done on research on Xylella. Following this, we decided to continue organizing a meeting on Xylella with the aim to provide a platform for researcher, stakeholder, risk manager, farmer representative, nurseryman, private sector to meet and to discuss what should be done on research to improve the control of this plant pathogen. The first meeting was in Mallorca, in one of the outbreak area in the EU. It was co-organized with the local host, the University of Balearic Island, and then the Ofresco Network for Phytosanitary Research Coordination, and the EU Horizon 2020 project, Ponte Factors, and the GRTD. This first meeting, we had 260 participants from 34 countries. And also here we start to discuss with stakeholders in the last session, what is the need, what's the future needs of research, looking at what has been achieved, and then particularly in this moment was the Ponte project was the most active, and looking at what should be done still. The second conference was organized in Ajaccio, in Corsica, France. Here we had more participants, 350 participants from 41 countries. And this was organized in cooperation with the local host, the IRA, ANSES, Office de l'Environnement de la Corse, and the European funded project Ponte Factor, CureXF, Euroxant, e Ofresco. This conference provides also the event for the final meeting, the final results of the Ponte project. We arrived today to the third European conference, where we aim to build knowledge and protect plant health. It's the first online conference. As you will see later from other presentation, we have 900 registered participants from 64 different countries. However, it being an online conference, the number of participants per session is variable, go from 200 to 400. And it's organized again in a cooperative manner together with the XF Actors project and the active contribution of other EU and transnational research initiatives, so BioVexo, CureXF, ERC Multi-X project, Ofresco, Euroxant, Cost Action, and Life Resilient. So now we are arriving to the last session of this conference, and the aim of this session is to discuss what are the future research needs and priority, with to look back what has been produced by researchers with very hard work in these years with the funding available, and try to understand from the stakeholder point of view what else we should do, what we should do in the future in research, for what you should fund in research also for the point of view of farmers, nurseries, risk managers in the outbreak areas, but also from the more general point of view of farmer, nursery, risk manager from the EU-wide perspective. And what is very important also is we should also listen to the views of the researcher, how much these research needs can be achieved and how. For this reason, now we have several talks from stakeholders, and then we will have a breakout session, a discussion session with the stakeholder and the chair of the scientific session of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. I would now like to introduce the second speaker, Anna Ruffolo from Copa-Cogeca. Her talk is New Research Priorities on Xylella fastidiosa from EU farmers' perspective. Welcome, Ms. Ruffolo.
Active. Are you able to see, or I think so?
We can see it, yes.
Okay. Please, some words about Copa-Cogeca, our mission and our objective. Copa-Cogeca aims to ensure a viable, innovative, competitive agriculture and agri-food sector, guaranteeing food security. And the main objective is promoting European farmers and agri-cooperatives' views in order to influence EU decision-making process and public opinion. Copa-Cogeca consists of European farmers and European agri-cooperatives. So 60 full members from EU member states are part of COPA, and 35 full members from EU member states are part of Cogeca. Copa-Cogeca is one of the largest and the most active organizations in Brussels from the past 60 years. Following the first findings of Xylella fastidiosa and EFA statement, Copa-Cogeca organization members did a great reaction with a lot of activities, information activity on disease prevention and management, coordination of requests to local authorities, collaboration with the phytosanitary services, relationship with the scientific and research community, participation in research programs, support and guidance for farmers and cooperatives on compensation and recovery investments. So organizations take part in the main European research programs as partners or as supporters. For us, is essential following job research point by point and step by step. What about key research achievements from our point of view? Absolutely effective and coordinated global reaction in order to provide answers to the problem, but also relevant findings and progress on knowledge in few years. And you implementing measures and national plans updated according to latest available knowledge. And what about priority needs for the future from EU farmers' perspective? Absolutely priority for reducing the spread of the bacterium, not less important, economic recovery where Xylella fastidiosa is no longer eradicable. So olive tree replanting under safety conditions and reconversion with other cultivation like cherry, citrus, almond in south of Apulia, of course. But also extraordinary recovery plan with attention to infrastructure and training. Investment in wider trials opportunity for companies in damaged areas. Moreover, proactive monitoring of disease-free areas. Also close monitoring of affected zones. Supporting good practice in fields. As you know, practice are the only tool in order to prevent, to manage the bacterium and the vector, of course. Greater support for the protection of the monumental trees. And what about our perspective concerning new research priority? For the future, genetic resistance screening and testing, so studies on the identification of species varieties resistant or tolerant to Xylella. We know that a lot of efforts have been made in order to reach these goals. We still have to carry on. We trust, especially for the future, in new biotechnologies. Yesterday, a specific commission study published and is a step in the good direction from our point of view. We need to speed up because we already late. Moreover, in Italy, genetic fully knowledge of olive, in particular of Lecchino variety, just reached. And we think that it will open to opportunities to opportunity development in this direction. Genetic and management are crucial too for Xylella prevention and containment. Not less important, integrated protocol management of the vector and organic protocol management of the vector and of Xylella, of course, in order to reach F2F objectives. As you probably know, next future targets for sustainable food production are to reduce overuse and risks of chemical pesticide and to achieve at least 25% of new agricultural land under organic farming. So farmers need new and alternative solutions for plant disease management as a biocontrol, as a physical tool, practices, and eco-friendly products and products to enhance host defense as example. Moreover, specific innovative solutions for protecting safe monumental olive trees because they are important not only for olive oil production, but also because they are part of landscape, our tourism, our identity, and obviously our history. Efficient, cheap, validated, and rapid diagnostic method and tools for early detection, remote sensing, for example, with drones in the future, we can imagine, we can suppose that knowledge on host plants, at least the most important economically, model to estimate Xylella fastidiosa spread and vectors population dynamics. We talked in the previous days for enhancing prevention. In general, innovative and sustainable management models for the recovery of compromised areas. For ending, research, farmers, our relationship for the future. What are long-term prospects? I put three bullet point general further knowledge on Xylella, of course, and plant health, enhance prevention efforts for future emergency. We need to learn from Xylella lesson for strengthening prevention for other future emergencies. And at the end, farmers not only like final information recipients, but also as partners for sharing needs and new project design. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ruffolo, perfectly in time. I would like now to welcome Josep Pagès from the European Nursery Stock Association. And I would like to introduce his talk, New Research Priorities on Xylella fastidiosa from EU nurseryman perspective. Mr. Pagès, the floor is yours.
Grazie Valdisera, good afternoon. And thanks again to EFSA, Ixafactors, and the organizers of this Congress for this opportunity to present our views. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that I will disappoint you because I'm not going to say anything new. In Palma's Congress in 2017, we gave the opinion that we needed applied research for nurseries on all host plants and quick off-field detection methods. We participated in the Congress in 2019 too, and we insisted on these needs. We are aware of the multi-factor aspects of the disease, the bacteria, the superspecies, the strains, the ST, plus the multiple vectors, plus the different climate zones, which are also evolving. And regarding plants, in addition to the hundreds of host species, in the nurseries there are thousands of varieties of cultivars, many different production and growing systems, plant presentations, and even sizes. To make it simple, we should at least distinguish between propagation nurseries and production nurseries and follow a different approach to tackle the disease in propagation units than in production nurseries. ENA represents nursery stock producers organizations from 22 European countries, where they have around 28,000 nurseries growing plants on 120,000 hectares. Mostly ornamental plants, although let me emphasize that ornamental plants are not for decoration only. They do not produce food, but produce oxygen and many ecosystem services, climate mitigation, biodiversity, health and well-being for us, social cohesion, and everywhere, in private and public spaces in all our villages, towns, and cities. We want to put the focus on ornamental plants. All kinds of nurseries must be free from Xylella and sell clean plants only. My colleague Luigi Catalano will talk later about fruit trees nurseries, and he and Vicente Dalmau will give their feedback for the demarcated areas needs, the plant health certification, heat treatments, insect-proof protected facilities, etc. In the free areas, we also need the quick eradication of any new outbreak and an immediate reaction to any interception. We have prevention guidelines and official regulations that have been created, updated, and shaped thanks to the research. But we are always one step behind. We are discovering new hosts when they are found infected. Our biodiversity, our landscapes, and ecosystems are still threatened. I counted approximately the number of presentations related to each plant species. Research on olive trees is the absolute winner, and I thank you on behalf of the European nurseries for all your scientific work. However, there are almost 600 species on the EFSA host plants database. I'm not suggesting that you stop working on olive trees, not at all. They are ornamental plants too. But we should not forget the hundreds of native and ornamental plant species must be safe from Xylella. So, what do nurseries ask for? First of all, a quick and reliable detection method. A technology that should be easy to use in the field, practical, that would allow mass testing when plants are entering into the nurseries and before they are sold. That would allow testing of native and wild plants in the nursery's vicinity. I'm sure it would also help controls at border control posts, and it would be a great decision aid for the authorities to control interceptions and initial outbreaks. Again, on plant species, the nurseries can change the species they grow. We have Plan A, Plan B, until Plan Z. If ornamental plant A has too many problems, the nurseries will produce ornamental plant B or C or any other plant species. There is such a wide range of ornamental plants in the market that nurseries can adapt. But nurseries need to choose. They have to make a decision. They need to know which species or cultivars are susceptible or resistant. And we must start now. Like turning a large cargo vessel needs its time, the nurseries may need years to adapt their production, and very important, to educate the demand, the public and private professional buyers of plants. Then the knowledge needs to be transferred, sometimes translated to basic language or applicable information. The European Nursery Stock Association and our national nurseries organizations in 22 European countries are happy to help with knowledge transfer and dissemination. We have seen excellent research results in this conference, research that has to evolve in tools to control the vectors and the bacterium. Preventively protecting all European nurseries with insect-proof facilities is not feasible, although it makes sense for propagation units and high-risk areas. The research must continue, but at the same time, we must start to put into practice to implement some techniques on a large scale. After screening the currently grown species and cultivars for their resistance to Xylella, we must think long-term. We need to start breeding resistant cultivars. For your work beyond fruit trees, we suggest that you make research on the most susceptible species, Lavandula, Nerium, Rosmarinus, Prunus, but not on Polygala myrtifolia. This Polygala is not native here in Europe, and in fact, nurseries and gardeners are replacing it with other species, and planting is even already forbidden or strongly not recommended by the authorities or the same sector in places like Valencia, France, and Catalonia. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the Xylella working group of our association. I thank you all for your attention, and I wish you a great and green weekend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pages. Now I would like to welcome the next speaker, Luigi Catalano from Civitalia, and this talk, What Research Needs in the Outbreak Areas, a Nursery Perspective for Olive and Fruit Trees Propagation. Luigi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everybody. As occurred in the last experiences for COVID-19, also the Xylella fastidiosa epidemic in Salento brought out some fragilities and criticalities of the system. And we have to learn about these in order to protect our landscape and our agricultural system for the future. Many thanks for to the organization to give us the possibility to show what the nursery sector, nursery fruit sector needs for the Xylella. First, already Joseph listed the necessity of rapid diagnostic methods, efficient and inexpensive. In fact, as you know, according to the new phytosanitary directive, also for fruit trees, this is the official recognition of the professional operator. That means the nurserymen that are involved in like active role in the prevention and control of the pests. And to have the availability of this rapid diagnostic kit will give the possibility also to authorized operators to check immediately in case of doubts if there are sanitary problems or not in the nursery. So this could improve the self-control system that are compliant by these phytosanitary rules, and also will be possible to implement one instrument that was developed within the working package number 9.4 within XF Actors project, that is WSPP, the Voluntary System Preventive Pest, that was developed with a colleague from WPP, from Nactimbo, Netherlands, and other stakeholders. Thermotherapy of the plant propagating material as a tool to sanitate or to prevent the occurrence of Xylella, as well as also other pests that may occur in the future in the EU. You know that the past implementing measure as the 2015/2417 recognized thermotherapy is a method that allows the vine material to be moved, to be traded within the union, inside and outside the infected area. So, but we need to know more about the parameters for the treatments, not only of the vines, but maybe also of other typology of material, like the scions, budwood, buds, or other species. Only by this way will be possible to have validated practice and methods that do not affect the quality of the materials, and to guarantee also the customers for the quality of the material that is not affected by the heat treatment. On the otherwise, there is also the needing to develop other alternative physical methods like cryotherapy, like steams, that may be useful also to sanitate or to guarantee more the material, the plant-propagated materials. As we know, as we learned today by the other speaks of the other speakers, we need very, very, very fast method for the pathogenicity assay in order to know if the species or some variety in some cases are allowed to be planted or not. You know that the last implementing measure regulation is 2020-1201, reclassify the susceptible the species for Xylella and Pauca, differentiated by the different strains. And in this case, also for our condition in Apulia region, it is not allowed to propagate and to move it, to plant within the area citrus species that are stated that are really immune by the strain of XF that we have here in Apulia, as well as other stone fruit species like European plum, peaches, or Chino-Japanese plum. So we need the availability of official biomolecular analysis method that can accompany, that may be used in addition to the classic indexing test that needs too much time in order to achieve some results. By this way, will be more feasible and more fast to have the news about the real status of several species, vegetable species, respect to the susceptibility to the different strain of Xylella. So we know in all Europe, in Italy, in my region, especially here, there were several programs in the past for the recovery and for save the biodiversity of the Mediterranean species. And here there are ex situ very interesting collection with hundreds and hundreds items of pears, fig, olive, and other fruit trees. In order to make sense to this research program, it is interesting, would be interesting to know the real susceptibility of this autochthon material to the XF strain that is present here in Apulia, and will be possible to reintroduce in a wide main for growing these species in our territory. And the germplasm screening of olive, we have some hope until the last meeting in Ajaccio, but Donato Bosch today showed us that the road is so long, and what I heard, the first impression after some years of experimentation, they failed. So we need to increase the assessment of the olive variety and germplasm susceptibility, especially for the ecotype that were collected in the infected area and that can be the basis of breeding program and that are now under study in order to know if there are some source of resistance for the olive breeding program that we hope will start in the future. Is the same. We need really this that a breeding program started for olive as well as also for other species that are affected by the bacteria. We hope that the public availability of the genome of Lecino. Today there was an interesting meeting in Italy, and we learned that Lecino was mapped, the genome. We hope that this will be available also to private stakeholders that can start by themselves or with agreement with the research institute breeding program for the resistance to Xylella. And also the using of new biological technique. We are happy to hear that yesterday the Commission is rethinking again its policy according to the new technique like genome editing and cisgenesis in order to speed this process. This is, according to us, the unique mandatory way to guarantee the future to the Mediterranean olive growing industry. And for the plant protection, we need to have more news about physical methods rather than chemicals one, in order to have more tools against the vector, of course. And also, as Joseph stated before, also for the biological control of the insect vectors, maybe with sexual confusion, with traps for monitoring, or also some active principles that can be effective for its control. This will push the facility for a high qualification of the plant propagated material toward the biological process, because we need also to produce a organic plant in the nursery. And the last one is automation. We agree with the position of Joseph. It is different, the propagation stock respect to the nursery in open field, but for the propagation of plantlets, maybe in the future, most of the nursery are organizing to carry out these in protected conditions, since the risks are very high. So the automation can help us in order to standardize the process with the reduction of the times and the cost, to be eco-compatible with the reduction of water and the use of fertilizer and pesticides according to the precision farming guidelines, and to reuse maybe also the plastic container and to have a lower impact on the fully nursery sector. And at the end, we hope that the EU research policies that are focalized to have immediate achievement of the results products do not penalize the basic knowledge, since these experiences at this symposium show it. It is important to have basic knowledge in order to project the future. And this is important to have a good result for the future. And on the behalf of the Italian nurseries, not fruit nurseries, but also nurseries that are involved in grapevine multiplication, thank you for the opportunity to represent our idea in this context.
Thank you very much, Luigi Catalano. Now I would like to call for a short break, 5 minutes. We will be back at 4:46. Welcome back. I would like now to introduce the next speaker, Vicente Dalmau Sorli from the Generalitat Valenciana, and his speech on what research needs in the outbreak areas, a risk manager perspective. Mr. Dalmau, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. I will try to make the full screen. So I hope you can hear me and you can see the slides correctly.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to thank to EFSA to give me the opportunity to participate in this important European conference about Xylella. I would like also to thanks to all the panelists and participants with very interesting talks and posters that they have prepared for this session. In my case, I'm working for the regional Ministry of Agriculture in Valencia region, and we have an outbreak since detected in June of 2017. My region is in the eastern part of Spain, and you can see here the size of the demarcated area in the northern part of Alicante, which represents about 5% of the regional territory. About some data about our area, we have about 128,000 hectares declared in the demarcated area with an infected zone of 2,300 hectares. We have put in place very intense surveys we have more than 57,000 samples in the demarcated area and about 23,000 samples in a non-demarcated area. We are applying eradication measures. We are going from the abroad part, the external part of the demarcated area to the inner part of the demarcated area. We have prioritized this eradication, but up to now we have 130,000 trees removed, mainly almond trees, more than 2,500 hectares treated with pyrethroids insecticide for the vector control, and we have supply for the growers for insecticide for this control. We have a strong restriction measure for plant propagation material movements in our nurseries. We have 63 nurseries affected for these strong restrictions. We have put in place road, airport, and port controls. We have performed a lot of awareness campaign, etc. You can see some images here about the surveys that we perform for the vectors, the road controls, how do we eradicate trees, and how do we treat with insecticides and to avoid root sprouts. As you can imagine, since June 2017, when we detect this, we have been to put in place a huge amount of resources. We have about 142 people working for this outbreak. We have spent nearly 20 million euros since less than 4 years. These fundings come from the Generalitat Valenciana, from the regional ministry, also for the national ministry, and also from the EU Commission. So I would like to highlight the importance that research has to adapt the regulation and to make an efficient use of resources to stop Xylella fastidiosa spread in the EU territory. I also would like to highlight how important is the investment on prevention. Prevention and early detection, in my opinion, are key factors in order to have a success to avoid the spread of a disease or an invasive species or whatever. The investment in euros that we put in place for prevention or eradication are much more effective because they have a much higher returns in the region than the others spend for containment, or when the disease is widespread in the area. So it's key to invest in prevention and also in early detection. About the projects and the research priorities, in my opinion, we should improve or deep in genetic studies for better understanding of differences of infection in different host plants, like prunus or rootstocks. We have seen that there are some rootstocks of almond that it looks to be resistant or less preferred for Xylella, or even in prunus, but we have almond trees in our region that are very highly infected. But however, peaches or another apricots or plums are much less infected than almonds. So why is this happening in our areas? We also wonder about where is remaining the bacteria in the deciduous species out of the sampling period, I mean in winter. Our objective is to broaden the sampling period, because we are using for sampling about 8 months a year, or 6 months of a high intense of surveys made and sampling. So it would be easy for us if we could take these samples all the year around. Also, we wonder if there is any seed transmission. This is important for nurseries, but also in areas where we have eradicated the plants, susceptible plants, because you can eradicate plants, but sometimes seeds are in the ground, so they germinate and they could origin the disease is still in the zone. And also, if there is another means of spread, like pruning, we know that, for instance, grafting could be a way of spread. We are scared about men-assisted spread of the disease in our areas, because we have detected that the disease is very widespread in the North Alicante area, but it's very homogeneous because it's all of the same genetical group, etc. Some advance that we have found in this project is that we've changed from systematic surveys done in the area based on a grid, and all the grids should be surveyed and sampled. And now we have shifted to a risk-based service, which have reduced the number of samples, the very high number of samples, but we are maintaining the level of detection. So this was very helpful for the authorities that are in charge of this kind of surveys. And also, again, I would like to emphasize how important for us is to broaden the sampling period, to reduce the peak season for the lab and for sampling. Also, it's important to have an accurate delimitation of infected zones. Alexander Martin told about his speech, how important this is, because the efforts cannot be done in a correct way if we have not an accurate delimitation of the infected zones. Modeling to estimate the disease dynamics in space and time, and in order to focus on our service in these high-risk places. We also need GIS development and adaptation for Xylella fastidiosa requirements. GIS development because we have many information to manage during the outbreak management measures. We have, for you to have an idea, we have about 22,500 orchards which are involved in the eradication area, and we have to contact with the owners, and all this information have to be very well stocked in a database and with a global information system. Better knowledge of the local bacteria and its possible host plant range, because we have seen that there is no one disease, but we have a very different diseases. It's a complex of diseases. About laboratory, it's important for us to know how we can pool the sampling and analysis, how accurate, consistent, and quick and affordable diagnosis is important for us. This has been told in the previous talks. Also, the sampling storage in the peak season could be a measure that we could help to have a broadened period for or more time to perform the analysis. And also which part of the plant should be sampled for the optimal sampling period and improve the method sensitivity. This is also very important for us in order, for instance, we can take samples of roots of almonds in winter if this is an authorized method and that it's proved that it's quite efficient. In our case, this could be a solution, but this should be proved. About the eradication measures, one thing all my previous speakers talk is about the final treatment to cure infected plants to reduce the very high impact that now the measures are having in the infected areas. Also, to know which is the effectiveness of removal only of the plants that showing the disease in each area. We have many kinds of plants, but only, for instance, almond trees are the much infected or with the highest prevalence in our area. So maybe the removal of these high prevalence trees would improve the phytosanitary situation on the area. Also, find measures to avoid resprout of eradicated plants, which is quite difficult because even with a revitalization treatment, sometimes plants can resprout, and also improvement the eradication technique to make them quick and effective. About vectors, it's been told as well, like finding the most effective treatment to reduce the insect population, and also some treatment that could suppress, not only reduce, but also suppress the insect transmission of the bacteria. Find more eco-friendly control measures like biological control agents. And also this project has put in place how the knowledge of the effective dispersal ability in natural condition of our vectors. So now we are quite sure that these measures are important. About replanting in infected zones, should be done studies for the legal alternatives. For instance, in our case, we were foreseen planting pistachio in eradicated areas, but since last update of the EU regulation, they found a pistachio species that was susceptible in some other countries. So before giving an alternative for growers, this should be tested before. And also this alternative should be economically viable for the area, because we have some areas where you cannot irrigate plants, so the alternatives are not so wide. And also very important to develop a resistant variety of specified plants. About
Mr. Dalmau, your time is over. Can you please accelerate?
Very, very quickly. About the studies of thermotherapy in other species than beeties, other quarantine treatments in order to make possible the movement of the plants, and also asymptomatic pool sampling of other plants than olive or polygala. And finally, how important is the awareness raising campaigns to give importance to avoid the rejection from the public for giving information which gives lack of confidence in the public. I'm sorry for my delay, but I will answer you if you have some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalmau. And now I would like to introduce the last speech, the new legal framework of the European Union on Xylella fastidiosa and future research priorities by Rosalinda Scalia, European Commission DG Sante. Ms. Scalia, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone from Brussels. I'm Rosalinda Scalia, and I'm Policy Officer in Directorate General Sante of the European Commission. I will quickly share the screen. Sorry. I hope that it's working. It's strange because I share it from the first slide, but I see. So
you have
now
to
it should be
change
okay.
the display setting as well, because we see 2 slides. If you go on the top left,
Yes,
you have a
have to do
display
it.
settings.
Ah, yes, okay. So
What?
sorry for this short delay. Now it should be okay, right?
Perfect. And
Okay.
apparently you also have a small window open. Can you also please reduce it?
Like
Because,
this? Yes.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much. Yes, I'm a policy officer in DG Santé dealing with plant health issues since the last 7 years. And I recently took over this dossier on Xylella from my colleague Pasquale Di Rubo, whom I want to thank a lot for all his previous work and for the material that was useful for me to prepare this presentation. I also received a contribution from my other colleague, Nandor Pitt, who is external auditor in Directorate General Santé. And he's been leading most of the audits in member states and also outside the EU to check in the field how the measures against Xylella fastidiosa are implemented. So in this short presentation, I will try to stick to the 10 minutes of your valuable time. My intention is to remind and to explain how from 2013, from the first detection of Xylella till today, the aim of the competent authorities involved in this in the management of the outbreaks has been to take advantage of the findings of the scientific of the research of the scientific community and to adapt the measures, the legislation accordingly. So that you can see here some key moments of the findings in the field of the disease and the excellent work that HEFSA has been doing in the year and how we adapted consequently the measures recently, as has been said by previous speakers in August 2020. Today we are now waiting for the finalization of the EFSA update on host plants, and we will take good care of possibly changing the legislation depending on the new knowledge about host plants. I will quickly go through also this presentation just to show you where we are in Europe. Unfortunately, since 2013, we have had other outbreaks, and now the member states of the European Union that are affected by Xylella, where there are outbreaks of Xylella, are 4. In some areas, we have containment measures, but the overall purpose of the management of Xylella is always heading toward eradication. That is the main priority. You know about the regulation that has been mentioned several times during this week, and I will briefly just go through few of those measures that have been changed compared to the previous decision and that would be useful in the field to fight, to have a better reaction to Xylella fastidiosa. The NPPOs of member states now have more tools to fight Xylella. They have to put in place contingency plans, and they have to provide for the capacity to have in place these measures. It is written in the legislation, and the annual survey activities from January 2020 will be based on EFSA guidelines for statistically sound and risk-based surveys. The molecular tests listed in the annex of the regulation are those tests that have been found effective in detecting Xylella in recent years. So we took advantage of the new knowledge and we mirrored that in the legislation. The demarcated area, as it is seen today, it's a bit different from the previous areas in the previous decision. We aim to have quick reaction, we aim to have implementable measures and to have the people in the field quickly taking action against Xylella with targeted efforts. As it was said also by the previous speaker, we have to put in place a system for efficiently use the resources that we have. The eradication measures are now there is a more targeted felling, limited only to those specified plants found infected in the demarcated area concerned. And then we have strengthened the vector control activities. And again, I want to stress that the surveillance has to be based on EFSA guidelines for statistically sound and risk-based surveys, with the molecular test included in the annex of the regulation. For containment measures, we have something different, with the felling limited only to the infected plants, to a certain part of the infected zone and in proximity of historical sites. For the vector and the surveillance, things are the same. Planting of specified plants in infected zones is possible under specific conditions. We have a general condition for insect-proof facilities, or we have specified that for containment areas, preferably resistant or tolerant plants are planted. And that for eradication, if those plant species have never been found infected in the demarcated area for at least 2 years. I had to take out some slides where I was speaking, where I intended to speak also about the movement out of the demarcated area, because I want to stick to the time frame that you allowed to me, but it will be, of course, I will be available for questions, for discussions, because I saw that that some of the previous speakers mentioned some constraints of when moving specific species from the demarcated areas, and the new regulation provides for several derogations. So there are many specific cases that are addressed by the new rules. But let's go now to the importance of the audits for Xylella. I already mentioned that we carry out audits in member states, especially in those member states that are affected by Xylella. Almost once per year, we go and see how the situation is in the field. My colleagues of Directorate F, responsible for audits and analysis, are responsible for this, and they publish their report in the DG Sante webpage. You can see all those previous reports. You will see the new ones coming out soon, and these audit findings are taken on board from the policymakers to amend and change the legislation. We keep an eye on how the competent authorities in the field, in the member states, react and address the recommendations that are listed in the audit reports. My colleagues also go to third countries to audit and to see, to check the presence of Xylella fastidiosa, or to check their declaration on the presence or not of Xylella. You may remember that there have been audits in Honduras and Costa Rica, where the two pictures were taken from my colleagues, but we plan to continue this audit series, and one recent audit has taken place also in Israel. You will soon see the report. Again, another good occasion to stress that also for non-EU countries, we ask to use the EFSA guidelines for statistically sound and risk-based surveys starting from 2023. Let's go now to the feedback from a legislative point of view. I don't want to repeat crucial aspects that have been already discussed during this week. I felt really privileged to be part of this event that started on Monday. And I was really very much impressed by this good example of cooperation, international cooperation to tackle an issue that has had devastating effects in the whole world. And I think that this Xylella example is really a good example of how the scientific community has cooperated so much, and how you have reached very good achievements. So we should all treasure these achievements, and this should serve to build trust. Trust is another concept that had been discussed during this week. Trust between nurseries, trust between the NPPOs of the countries involved, and trust that we need to build up upon. So I'm not going to repeat what has been said, but I'd like to look ahead with you, with the need that we have to use to see how the use of new technologies can be a tool for enhancing the survey's capacities, and all the survey's activities that will serve for early detection, which is a crucial element for fighting this disease. We need more information on the role of vectors, because the vectors as we know them in Europe or in specific areas in Europe can be completely different in other areas, can be also absent, as we learned for the case in Israel, where they are still trying to figure out which vectors are responsible for the spread of this disease. So there's a lot to be done there. Of course, on resistant and tolerant varieties, and on the importance of the genetic improvements, we can confirm that it will be crucial also for the future needs. Modeling has been as well very much discussed during this week, so I can only confirm that it will be crucial with the epidemics and establishments for the disease, and curative treatments, of course, are very much in the priority list for research needs, also from our point of view. I will thank you with one last message that I would like you to take home. One of the speakers of Wednesday afternoons was asking, where are the plants? Where is plant health in the international scenario? Why animal health, or of course human health, given the circumstances, are always in the spotlight, while plant health is still struggling to have adequate attention? I wanted to remind you that we celebrated the International Year of Plant Health, and that these celebrations are still ongoing, because the final ceremony will take place the 1st of July this year, and that we have to take advantage of this momentum of general and international attention to plant health, and to sell very much all your achievements in this field, in the field of Xylella fastidiosa, but putting it in the overall picture of the European Green Deal, of the Farm to Fork, and of in the International Year of Plant Health. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scalia. Now it's time for the discussion. So I would like to invite the speakers of session 5, as well as the chairs of the sessions of the 3rd European Conference on Xylella fastidiosa to join us. And then I would like to leave the floor to Giuseppe for the first questions, comments.
So repeated needs along the different stakeholder presentation. We could say it is a bit worrying to see that needs are not changing starting from the first conference, but this is very difficult pathosystem, and I think we have forgotten that the normal time which is needed, for example, for a genetic plant breeding program, which is not done in 1 year or 2 years. So I have some question in the chat. For example, I would like to ask, now I move a bit the attention from the speakers, from the stakeholder, also to the chair of the session. I wanted to ask if possible Maria Vlami was chairing the diagnostic and surveillance section. We have seen some presentation about extending the sampling period, extending the sampling, also the sampling part of the plants. We talk about roots, we talk about different time of the year. This looks like this is a need for the risk manager for in the outbreak area. And how much research is needed, according to Maria, to give this kind of practical information, or do we already have results that can be shared?
Okay, I will try to provide an answer on this. I hope you can hear me well and you can see me also well. Okay. Well, this is rather a tough question still, and of course, like it was also mentioned in the presentations of this session more times, this is something already indicated in one of the first and the second EFSA conferences. But there is a huge need on diagnostics and specifically on which part of the plant to be taken. I think the biggest issue at the moment that more labs are experiencing is related to the fact when you have to monitor plants without symptoms and the sampling associated with this kind of monitoring. So in these cases, you need to include a higher volume of plant material. You need to pull more plants together to create one plant sample for laboratory analysis. And there are still many gaps in knowledge and many uncertainties. Dealing on the part of the root or detection of Xylella fastidiosa in the roots, I think we had during the last few days mentioning in a few presentations that this is not always the case. Of course, we know the well-reported results where Xylella fastidiosa could be found, for example, in the model plant, the tobacco, so the Nicotiana tobacco, but this is not the case for all plants. And of course, don't forget, if you would like to perform diagnostics in the plant roots, in the root system of the plant, this is something that goes more to a more destructive approach for sampling. So this is for sure also from the stakeholders approach, so for nurseries, not a very desirable situation. So yes, altogether, I think there are still many questions to be answered dealing with sampling associated on diagnostics. Yes. So in this sense, I fully agree with what was mentioned also in the presentations in this session.
Thank you very much, Maria. And now I profit that you are on the screen, so I ask you another easy question. So there's a strong need from the stakeholder on rapid test. Where are we with the rapid test, and how much research is needed in terms of fundings or research effort for that?
There's a lot of progress already happened. If we look in the framework of the ICSE Factors project, but also partly in the Ponte project. So we have the development, just some examples to highlight the development of some recent multiplex tests where you can actually detect Xylella fastidiosa directly in the plant tissue, but at the same time you can also determine the subspecies associated there. So it is the real-time PCRs developed in 2 different labs, which actually help to have, based on one test, the detection of Xylella fastidiosa, but also the determination of the subspecies involved. But at the same time, I heard also some of the previous speakers of this session speaking about rapid tests, let's say in situ, so directly in the field. I think we also have to remain a little bit realistic because we deal with a pathogen, Xylella fastidiosa, which is a fastidious pathogen. So based on its biology, it has a very slow growth, a very slow movement, at least if you compare it with other plant pathogens, with other bacteria. And of course, we deal in many cases where, at least in many countries around inside the European Union, where asymptomatic plant material has to be tested. So then, per definition, you have low densities. You might have low densities of Xylella fastidiosa present, and it makes also the part of diagnostics more complicated, more difficult. So, yeah, I think this would be a little bit a summarized point of view from my part on this question.
Thank you, Maria. And then I was thinking, moving to another topic, I would like to ask Antonio Vicent, who was co-chairing the control section. There is a lot of need from stakeholders on a methodology development for the heat treatment from the thermotherapy, because this method has been studied only in grapes fundamentally, and then in few other species in US. So what do you think is missing? Why there's no research in extending the thermotherapy to other species? What can be done?
Well, I think it's a matter of investing maybe resources on that, because actually the technology is there. I mean, there are several companies providing this equipment at commercial level for nurseries and for other applications. It's true that these experiments usually take some time. You need large plots, and I mean, it's not something that you can do in your lab in a small machine. You need a kind of commercial or pre-commercial equipment. And also, I think Pages also highlighted the large, let's say, variability, diversity of plant species, varieties. So it's difficult to target all of these things. There will be always things that are not included in those experiments, and differences on heat tolerance, for instance, could be defined at variety level, at cultivar level, not at the species level. So I think that on one side is the lack of maybe investment in these things, and the other, the size of the experiments and the number of plants and fields that need to be planted, because it's not only testing the viability on the pathogen, the effect of the treatment on the pathogen, also what is the effect of these hot water treatments on the plant. That is very well studied in grapevine, also because there are other diseases caused by fungi that were controlled by this approach. But for other species, there is a lack of knowledge there. Yeah.
Thank you, Antonio. And still, if we stay on the topic of research needed for the outbreak area, there was an interesting point by Vicente about the need to move the GIS, if I'm not wrong, but I don't know if it was Vicente or was another speaker, to move the GIS, the modeling, and also the image analysis, the remote sensing, to the field application. So what is the obstacle to move this technology to the field application? Do we need to have more research on that, or we need to have more company working on it? What do you think? This is an open question to all the participants of this session. We've seen great progress in this area in early detection on Xylella, detection of plants with symptom in almond, in olive, but what is blocking us from using it for surveillance, for example? So,
Giuseppe,
you have the
if I
screen.
can add something.
Maria, yes.
Yeah, no, just because in Apulia a couple of years ago, when we first tested and validated the system, there was the interest of our local phytosanitary authority to try to apply this technology, especially for those important areas like where monumental olive trees are grown, and so to protect this area. At that moment, the technology was mainly based on aircraft and hyperspectral imagery to be taken, and so it was quite difficult to transfer the application, the operational application. I mean that we needed to find the aircraft, the best period to fly, have some area that are not under military restriction and so on. Now we believe that maybe it is a matter of transfer this technology to the phytosanitary authority. They should adapt if they want to use this system, because as was shown this morning by Pablo, now even based on a drone, we can have the application of this technology not on as he said, 1 million of hectares, but at least on thousands of hectares. So I think there should be. It is something that is new for the phytosanitary authority, and we should promote the transfer of the technology. But maybe it's just a matter of helping the transfer now of the technology. Then I don't know. I'm not really expert on the remote sensing.
Thank you, Maria. So it is actually 1 week now that we intensely exchange information and knowledge on Xylella. How can we keep this ongoing? How can amplify this message? This I will ask to Ralph. How you think we can amplify this message to the stakeholder? How can we keep the stakeholder community aware of the progress of research? What are the tools for this?
I mean, I'm the chair of a cost action, and this gave us the opportunity to interact, to create networks, also including stakeholders. And we have held annual conferences, and they were all announced by Twitter, newsletters, everything like this. So there was the opportunity to create more links, at least from our side, and the funding we had observed. But I must frankly say that we barely got applications from outside the scientific research field, I must say. I'm sorry to say this, but that's reality. We will have the last conference in June. I have announced this at the opening of this event, and we are still receiving applications. So I hope that more people will come and register to this event.
Thank you, Ralph. Maybe I can ask back to Giuseppe Paget from ENA, European Nursery Association. So, Giuseppe, what do you think can be done to increase the communication between scientists and stakeholders? What they did in this conference using social media is something which is useful. Is a way forward. There should be something different to be done, or what we do is sufficient, and we don't want to meet.
No, it's. Thank you, Giuseppe. It's a very interesting question. We need to pass all the information, all the knowledge to the final users and the nurseries and the gardeners and everywhere. But I think this information must be adapted to the audience. Social media is good, but I don't think the people, the mass, most of the people understand the concept well. I myself am getting lost in many of the conferences we have been following this week. So we need to explain the practical aspects and give practical guidelines and practical rules on how to proceed according to the science. I'm certainly sure that people is everywhere aware of the disease and the risks that disease poses because of the social media also. And as it was mentioned 2 days ago by the reporter, now there are not any fake news anymore. It was as it was at the beginning. So this is something that it was created, or it was solved because you are communicating positive or the real good messages. Additionally, we have an extra handicap, for example, compared to the United States, is that we have many, many different languages, and we cannot use the same message everywhere, just copying and pasting it. So we have to even to translate it into the language of the users. But it's something that it must be done. We are here to help you offering our network of nursery associations to help with the dissemination of the scientific knowledge.
Thank you. And actually, from the question from research needs, which we've seen from Giuseppe, but also from Anna Ruffolo, from Copa Cogeca, also from Vicente, there is also a need for further research on control. So for research on integrated pest management, on organic farming, on sustainable agriculture control of this of the vector of the disease. So there I would like to ask the colleague from the session on vectors, so Astrid and also Saskia. What do you think is the next research that can be done to reach an IPM for the vector of Xylella, for example, or to reach organic farming control of Xylella?
Thank you, Giuseppe, for your question. First of all, I like to see in the future olive oil cultivation because Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece are the most important world producers for olive oil, essential for our health. So I would like for the future olive oil production and other cultivation, alternative cultivation. So close to traditional ones. I want to see innovative, resilient, modern, and modern system managed in a sustainable way, of course. And the management of the vector is crucial. So we need to find a new solution integrating chemical control. So by I want to see farmers at a job, not left or died fields, and so farmers are able to face with climate change, with pests and main global market challenges. So pest control is crucial for the position, for the economic position, but also for guaranteeing food and land control. So it is a big challenge for the future.
Thank you. Maybe I see there is a nice comment in the chat from Massimiliano. If you can make your comment. So the issue is also resistance. So in sustainable agriculture, one way of cultivate crops and fight against the disease is having resistant varieties. So Massimiliano Morelli would like to comment on the work for obtaining resistance.
Yes, I've seen in many of your talks that it was included among your needs, the call for a rush in the research of resistant traits or resistant varieties. And I was wondering how, from your point of view, are you willing to support scientists to ask the EU and local authorities to implement an evidence-based regulation of genome editing tools in European agriculture? But not only this, also a revision of the regulation concerning trials at lab or field scale, being this an infeasible bottleneck for studying resistance from our point of view.
So this is a question from research to stakeholder to asking for for support. I think it would be also very nice to understand when we're talking about these hundreds of species, what is the feasibility of testing hundreds of different species and varieties? This I will ask Alessandra de Souza from Brazil. What do you think? Do we have enough resource to test all the host plants of Xylella, all the varieties? We don't hear you. We don't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so in Brazil we have different varieties, and some of them are resistant to Xylella, but it was obtained by breeding. But the industry doesn't want such varieties to orange for juice, orange juice, because doesn't have the compounds that are requirements to the juice. So when we have breeding, when we cross, we have difference in some metabolites that are not required by the industry. And so we still have the same varieties. And in the country, commercialize them. However, we still work on these resistant varieties, and also with other methodology using biotechnology. And now we are using CRISPR too, because we think there are some things that the people want now probably not. It will be the same in 10 or 20 years. And so we need to be prepared. And so that's why we have some collaboration, we have some field to continue testing such new varieties or even using biotechnology tools. But it's not easy, but we are working on this.
Thank you. So I don't know if Baldissera would like to ask some more questions to the speaker. I have a question for Baldissera.
I had a few questions along yours idea, Giuseppe, but I can...
Please.
So it's a comment on the thermotherapy. What we saw during this afternoon presentation is that there is a need from the stakeholders' point of view. In Ufresco, for 3 years in a row, thermotherapy was identified as a research priority, and scientists and organizations from different countries worldwide position themselves on this topic. So there is also willingness by the researchers. So what I understand is that the limiting factor are the availability of funds and the resources to start this activity. So I think it's the responsibility of the funders to acknowledge this willingness to work on this important topic. And then a question on the quick detection method. So the European Nursery Association, they suggested the use of sniffer dogs. And so my question would be, what is the knowledge around volatiles? And this is something that can be used and applied rapidly. I don't know who can answer the question.
Thank you for the question. I don't know if it's going to be a success, but in Germany, I think also in Austria, they have some experience with the sniffer dogs for some pests, some animal pests, well, like bugs and borers or similar, like Anoplophora chinensis, for example. And I think they are trying sniffer dogs also on Xylella to know if it's if they are detecting the volatiles, if there are detectable for the dogs or not. But I don't have the scientific knowledge of it. Ralph will probably have better knowledge, or I don't know.
No, I would only a very personal point of view. I mean, we are speaking about something reliable. There are criteria: reliability, speed, affordable. I mean, I don't think that this will fit to these criteria.
Well, it's working with other pests. They are past the, that it's like a sniffer dog at the airport. They put it in the lorry when charging plants or around the nursery.
This is a more controlled condition. But in the field, you have tons of other plants. The environment is always different. I mean, it's so hard to control. An airport is like, you can compare with airports.
Yeah, of course not.
You can check maybe for introduction of plants at an airport, but going out to the field and then going to almond trees and olive trees, I'm sorry, I would be very, very skeptical that this will be used in a broad scale.
Well, we will see if in Germany they are training dogs for it. We could have results. I know that when we ask for quick and affordable and an easy method to test plants, we would like to have something like now it's very popular, the pulse oximeter that we just check, put on the leaf, and we say, oh, it's negative to Xylella or it's positive. We know that it's unrealistic now, but who knows? You can invent something for the next conference in 2 years' term, and I hope, and hopefully we'll be there to discuss it personally.
Yes.
So I think we will add this to the question that we will reply after the conference. We'll ask our speaker about the experience of sniffer dogs also in a similar pathogen, the Xylella. But for now it's 5:42, so I think we have to close the discussion, have 3 minutes break, I think, because the time is, we will start the next presentation at 5:45. Maybe, let me check the program. That's correct. So at 5:45, Gisela Quaglia will talk with us about the next opportunity for research funding from Horizon Europe in plant health. So I suggest we stop now for maybe for 5 minutes and we start again at 5:48, 5:50. We reconvene again, have a small break, and we start with the next presentation. Thank you, everybody, for this interesting discussion. It opened a lot of questions for research and for funding and for stakeholders. Thank you, and stay connected. Also, don't have your break, but do not disconnect. We will. And now the final session with the presentation by Gisela Quaglia, starting at 5:50 on the new opportunity for research, and the conclusion speech from Maria Saponari and Claude Bragard.
So good afternoon. We had a very busy day and week. It's impressive to have at this time of Friday afternoon more than 200 participants. So very happy to present Horizon Europe to this community. I had the pleasure to open the final meeting on X factors on Monday, and now I'm the very last presentation. So as I work in as research program officer in DG Agriculture, and we are responsible for the development and the implementation of EU research policy in the field of sustainable agriculture and forestry. So I want to thank to organize this final session of new and future research needs. I took note of very interesting points raised by the previous speakers. So for now, my presentation will include what is the current policy context and the challenges that we have ahead, an overview of the new research framework program, Horizon Europe, and the opportunities in the area of plant health and particularly for Xylella. So going to the research context, we have the Green Deal, the European Green Deal. That is the roadmap for making EU economy sustainable, but turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities, and also to make the transition just and inclusive for all. At the very heart of the Green Deal, we have the farm to fork strategy. It addressed the challenge of sustainable food systems, and also we recognized the links between healthy people, healthy societies, and also healthy planets. So we consider that research and innovation are critical to accelerate the transition and also to achieve the objectives of the European Green Deal. But moving to the farm to fork strategy, we aim to make food system fair, healthy, and environmental friendly, and also to accelerate this transition. So the overall goals that we have with this strategy can summarize in the creation of a robust and resilient food system, also to reduce the environmental and climate footprint of the EU food system, to lead a global transition towards a competitive sustainability from farm to fork, and tapping into new opportunities. This strategy also comes with some quantitative targets that were set in to be reached by 2030. Most of the targets are very relevant to the agriculture sector, and like the reduce of pesticides, the reduce of the reduced use of the most hazardous pesticides, but also to reduce the nutrient losses and the use of fertilizers, to increase the area of organic farming, to increase the area of with high diversity landscape, and from the animal production to reduce the sales of antimicrobials to reduce antimicrobial resistance. So these are also policy targets that we have considered at the moment of develop the call from Horizon Europe. So the European Green Deal set the targets, very ambitious for farmers, for foresters, for rural communities, and we need research and innovation, and we think that research and innovation can be a key enablers on this transition. The targets, as you see, needs to be achieved by 2030, so we have less than a decade, and it's time to step up our efforts. The good news is that we don't start from scratch in plant health. Under Horizon 2020, we have supported over 30 projects related to plant health with an investment of over 160 million euros. So we know that keep our plant healthy are not an easy feat, and we need an increased amount of research and innovation activities. But as you can see here on the screen, there is a not exhaustive list of projects that deal with different pests and diseases, and has provided also tools on early detection and monitoring, in integrate pest management, in develop new pesticides, biopesticides. So there are many things ongoing, and we are not starting from scratch with this issue. So we have put different elements on the table to develop Horizon Europe. New scientific evidence, stakeholders' view to develop. We have worked together also with other DGs and the member states to develop a strategic plan that it was adopted in March this year. This is a novelty of Horizon Europe that we are going to publish and to develop 2 strategic plans during the whole period of the program. And we have worked in a very and truly creative way, with several interactions with stakeholders and also with the public in several occasions, in research and innovation days and through surveys. So moving to the structure. So this is the structure of the whole program with three main pillars. I would like to highlight here the whole program has been approved by the European Parliament just this week, and it will fund research for over 95 billion euros in these 7 years. People in this audience can find also interesting funding opportunities in Pillar 1 for basic research in applying to fundings for the European Research Council or the Marie Curie actions. But as coming from the unit B2 in agriculture, I will focus my presentation or the rest of my presentation in Pillar 2, that we designed the funding for research that needs to tackle or to address global challenges. In Pillar 2, we have 6 clusters that goes from health to digital to climate. And in particular, I would like to draw your attention to Cluster 6, that's focused on food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. And we have a budget of around 9 billion euros to spend in the 7 years of Horizon Europe. So Horizon Cluster 6, let me introduce the big picture of the cluster. We include, in the strategic plan, we have defined 6 expected impacts that we want to achieve in the long term with research and innovation. And specifically, we want to maximize impacts in the spheres of climate neutrality and adaptation to climate change, preservation and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems, sustainable and circular management and use of natural resources, food and nutrition security for all within the planetary boundaries, sustainable balance and inclusive development of rural and coastal areas, and also governance models that enable sustainability. So unfortunately, I'm not able to share specific details on the calls for the first work program 21-22 because it's still not published. But what I can share at the moment is the research priorities that we include in when we design the calls, and you can see that we, in a nutshell, we include or we take in consideration what was mentioned before by the previous speaker. So we know that we need to enhance the capacities to prevent, to monitor, and to control plant pests. We need to develop safe and environmentally friendly methods for plant protection and also for weed control, to increase the resilience of plants to biotic and abiotic stresses, but to bring also more diversity into farming and forestry, and provide also farmers in the value chain with better adaptive crop varieties, that was also mentioned, and to improve the conservation, the management, and use of plant genetic resources, preserving and enhancing agrobiodiversity. It was also mentioned the need to interact, to create networks. I can say that our calls in plant health includes this condition of the multi-actor approach, that it has worked very well under Horizon 2020. when in the multi-actor approach, well, we try to bring researcher and practice close together, and also to maximize the impact of the research and innovation. This approach, with this approach, we explicitly require that the proposals include the participation of a variety of actors. So not only researchers, not only farmers. So there is the network of actors that everyone brings their knowledge and skill, and to develop the solutions and the tools that are needed. This approach has allowed us to significantly increase the uptake of the solutions on the ground. So then it's not only on the research arena, but also farmers can implement the tools that were developed during the projects. So more information about Horizon Europe. The program, as I said, is ready to kick off, but there is still not, the calls for this year they are still not published, but I would like to, we are organizing 2 relevant events, one specifically for the cluster, the info days, that's up to today, they are will happen on the 26th and 27th of May, but still need to be confirmed. And also the research and innovation days in June, where you can discuss and get more information how to apply to the different calls. So as Horizon Europe is a complete new framework program, it comes with difference from the previous one, from Horizon 2020. So I include here in my presentation the links to 2 webinars that had happened in March and in April, where you can find general information on how to apply and what is new in the proposals for Horizon Europe. So how to prepare a successful proposal, and the calls for proposals will be published soon in the Funding and Tenders portal. So we look forward to receive your excellent proposal to our first call. To keep updated with the information, just follow us in social media and also on the website of the Commission, where you can find further information about the program. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for the attention, and I hope we can keep collaborating in the future in future projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gisela, also for the timing and for the very informative presentation. I let now the floor to Maria Saponari and Flo Bragar for the conclusion of the conference.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. I need to share my screen. Maybe I need to be allowed. From a technical point of view. Okay. So do you see the screen?
Yes, we see it. Yes, we see it.
Okay. So this is the conclusion from the third European Conference on Xylella fastidiosa, organized back-to-back with the XF Actors final meeting. And this conclusion will be given by Maria Saponari and myself. And I would like to thank Maria Saponari, who is the project coordinator for XF Actors, to devoting some time in preparing this conclusion, because she has been spending an enormous amount of time over the last years on Xylella research and, of course, so thank you very much, Maria. So I will be short, recalling the previous organization we have had on Xylella in EU. First, a workshop in Brussels, and then Giuseppe Stancanelli already mentioned this. Also, the first European conference on Xylella fastidiosa organized in Palma de Mallorca in Spain. The second conference organized in Ajaccio, Corse, with a 2-day conference, and also the presentation of the final results of the Ponte projects with a lot of participants already. And this third European conference on Xylella fastidiosa organized back-to-back with this XL Factors final meeting. And this was organized. We have had a very intense week with an increase in participants. Maybe this was because of the online participation. Giuseppe already mentioned almost 900 participants, approximately 600 from EU, and also a lot of participation from different continents. 72 oral presentations, 102 posters, which have been published on the Center of Knowledge Junction, and also focus on young researchers for oral presentations with posters. And you have seen these also explanations on the EFSA YouTube channel. Also a lot of efforts for communication via Twitter and so on. Just to give you an overview, so we have had a very strong participation, and I take the opportunity of this slide just to mention that we have had also participation from different continents, and thank you for all of those who participated and waking up early or looking at the conference quite late in the day, because this is also an issue. And I give the floor to Maria.
Yes, thank you, Claude. I want to thank the chairs for the input that they gave us to summarize this long conference. And so lots of things we discussed. So it was even not easy to highlight the most important. I will, in both the XF Factor meeting, final meeting, and the conference, the first session we're dedicated to study the pathogen biology and the interaction with the host. I want to, next slide. And in this slide, we summarized what are the measure accomplishment that compared to what we knew from the previous conference and from the previous knowledge. For sure, it is true that still we have a few work on almond, but we have some now. We have some knowledge about the Xylella pathosystem in almond. We know that we had heard about some varieties that are more susceptible than the other. We know about the behavior of the rootstock, and I would say that differently from olive, here in almond, for sure, rootstock is another component to be investigated. So there is also the rootstock scion combination to be explored, as well as in this case, we gather more knowledge about the aggressiveness and the pathogenicity of the multiplex strain. We had some papers showing the different strain of multiplex and the behavior on different almond varieties. It was quite interesting to know that olives is not so susceptible to multiplex strain as for Pauca. On the other hand, from Brazil, we got a confirmation that the Pauca strain, regardless the sequence type, they can be very aggressive on olive. For the genomic part, I think that we have made lots of interesting advancement now. We have narrowed the panel of potential genes of Xylella, which are responsible for the host interaction, for the host specificity. This is something that we still don't know, which make one strain compatible with one host and not with the other. So now this has been more We have a panel of pandemic genes that can be now further explored, and with the good news that in Europe will be more accepted the transgenic and the gene functional studies using transgenic approach. This would be for sure. It came at a good time, and on the same track is the work on the resistance. We in olive we have good advances regarding which is the host component that is involved in Xylella infection, and the new project, the ERC project that Silke Roberts is developing, will work. We are sure will give important information on this aspect, the immune response against Xylella, and also the interesting results about some specific metabolic profiles that can be maybe in the future used as marker of the infection, and so as Luigi Catalano was asking, avoid the long pathogenicity study. The next slide. Then after the session on the bacterium and the host, the other session which accounted for the highest number of contribution, I believe, both for as oral presentation and also as poster presentation, is the one on vectors. Next slide. Here we could only pick some key information. For sure, during these past years, we have gained a lot of knowledge on the lifestyle of the spittlebug. One of the suggestions that came from one session on the vectors was that now we have the tool to downscale this study at the level of agrosystem and at the local level to implement the control of the vector, as we know that is a biological cycle can change according to the specific and the peculiar conditions of the crop environment, management, and so on. We have also heard about the impact of the temperature and moisture as a factor that driven the spittlebug population, and we know better while there was a lot of knowledge regarding the transmission in sharpshooter. Now we gained similar information on spittlebug about how it's persistent, the infection, how it increases over the time in the foregut, and so on. We heard also about modeling the population dynamics, which could help to improve the surveillance. And we gain knowledge about which are the sharpshooter and the high diversity that exists in Brazil on olives, so on olive growth. So as well as while for most of the study in Europe have been devoted to spittlebug, we also learned about other potential vectors that should be regarded in Europe, as the work presented by Noemi Casarin on Aflophora salicina. Next slide. And in regard of the control of the vectors, I have to say that it was still again stressed the concept that we should reduce the population when these insects are at the juvenile stages, because all the attempts to reduce the transmission of the adults have some efficacy, but can be improved if we reduce before the population. And then we had also rich sessions on the epidemiology, modeling, and surveillance. Next slide. From this, I would say that several models have been developed and to improve the surveillance, especially in pest-free areas. As I mentioned before, for the remote sensing, maybe we need to transfer all this model in the practices to further support the phytosanitary authorities in the implementation of the monitoring. We heard this morning that RIBES is going to be applied, but that there is need training and for adapting their methodology to the new survey scheme. So, and the same would be for implementing and exploiting all these methods. We heard about a new approach to have a fast characterization of the Xylella genetic diversity directly in the host plants, which can be very useful in new outbreak to understand to answer immediately to some crucial question when an outbreak is intercepted. For the modeling, I just want to reinforce the concept that for scientists it's important to have good monitoring data for implementing the models. And then we already have spoken about remote sensing, but one important aspect that came out in this conference is that the colleagues of remote sensing, working on remote sensing, implemented the system by using epidemic spread models. So the synergic integration of models and remote sensing can really allow to improve the surveillance. And we, as we are running out of time, we already spoke about the remote sensing and the possibility to transfer now this knowledge to different crops. And I leave you the floor.
Thank you very much, Maria. So we also have had sessions on the control of the pathogen in the host plant and towards sustainable management strategies. And then we all know that the expectations are very high on these issues, but it takes a long time just to develop. We have gained knowledge on the microbial communities in olives and almonds, or even in insects. And then, of course, this is offering potential biocontrol agents, possibly. Knowledge on bacteriophages has also increased, and we have had interesting presentations on this issue. Also, we have seen with interest the research on biopeptides, on natural and eco-friendly compounds, which are on the screening now. And I underline again here the importance of host plant resistance, which remains a major but a long-term issue. It takes time just to breed for resistance. And we need probably to combine the classical breeding with the progress on the and the knowledge we are now building on the host-Xylella interaction. And this resistance or this tolerance need to be deployed to avoid the spread, of course, of Xylella in areas targeted by the bacteria. But do not expect a single silver bullet. We will need to combine the progress we made on when we are the progress we have on the knowledge on Xylella fastidiosa, on the insect vectors biology, also on the host plant susceptibility to achieve sustainable management, combining all the different tools that we have at ANTS. And the BioVex project is now targeting biospins, microbial metabolites, plant extracts, and pathogenic fungus, just to go a step further in this idea of control possibilities. We have also seen a lot of progress on the vector side and for managing the issue. We have had also a very nice and interesting discussion with the stakeholders, and we need to strengthen the links in between the expectations from the stakeholders and ongoing science. Of course, we may stress the need for research funding on Xylella, given the high damage of the bacteria, the complex variability, the different strains, the numerous hosts, and then vectors, not to mention the different agroecosystems that are targeted by the bacteria. There is a need for basic research, but this should be done in connection with applied research. There is also demand for a strong applied research, which is and remains key with large resources to progress on resistance treatments, host range for planning substitution crops, valuable for farmers, to guarantee, of course, the healthy status and the pest-free for nurseries. There are some demands on e-treatments, certification schemes. We need to enhance our capacity to prevent, monitor, and control pests, and this is very clear. Demand also for quick detection tools, and we have discussed this in the last session. Stress also the importance for early detection and surveillance, which are key issues. It will always be cheaper to survey than to eradicate. I will not speak too much about the control measures. We have detailed over the week on the insect vectors, on the bacteria, but these are ongoing and these are important issues. There was a demand to expand the research on a wider spectrum of host plants, and I think we should really take care of this. This remains an issue. And I will also maybe close this stressing the importance of communication and raising awareness about these major plant disease in the EU. And of course, we need to bridge the gap between research and practice, accelerate the process of transferring research results, and probably keep the idea of networking in between stakeholders and researchers. By the end of this intense week, I would like to thank all the participants, all those who contributed, and we will find on the screen the names of all the ones. If XF Actors Management Board and Scientific Committee, the Scientific Committee of the Conference on Xylella fastidiosa, a lot of external experts. Thank you very much, all of you. Sessions moderators, the organizing committee, the EFSA communication team, and XF Actors communication team, and probably Bloom who supported this event. I am not able to tell you all the names, but I would like to deeply thank all of these. Maria already mentioned we have had some great chairs, and this is really crucial for the success of such an event, and I have deep thanks to all of these. Thank you very much for this. We are going towards maybe a fourth European conference on Xylella. Maybe this event will be hybrid. I hope we will have a physical meeting, even if this online session was excellent. And the idea, as I heard, would be to organize this back-to-back with these IPPC 2023 to be organized in Lyon, France. And so I hope I will be able to meet you there. Many thanks to you all for your active participation. Thank you very much, Maria. And we need to translate this week of conference and intense thinking into action. That's important. And maybe one is the growing community of brilliant and hardworking young plant researchers. And I have to mention young plant researchers, not all like me. And so thank you all. And I hope you enjoyed this week of conference and keep in touch. And I give you the floor, Giuseppe and Maria.
Thank you to all participants, really. Thank you to our speaker, to our colleagues that collaborate. And I think we can, after Maria's last words, we will close the session of this very long and intensive and fruitful week.
I want to thank you for allowing us to host our final meeting under the umbrella of this third conference. It was really interesting to, and we benefited for being part of this conference. Thank you very much.